I never thought a pink unicorn lunchbox would destroy my life. But that Tuesday morning, when I opened Sophie's lunch container to add her favorite chocolate chip cookies, I found something that changed everything forever. My hands are still shaking as I tell you this story. My name is Julia Mason. I'm 42 years old, a working mom just trying to make it through each day. 3 years ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive to find love again after tragedy. Today, I know I was living with a monster. The note was tucked under Sophie's napkin, folded small and written in shaky handwriting. Your husband isn't who he says he is. Check the storage unit on 5th Street. I read it 3 times before my brain could process the words. Who would put this in my 6-year-old daughter's lunchbox? And why? My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, crashing to the kitchen floor. The sound made Sophie look up from her cereal. Mommy, you look scared, she said, her big brown eyes. I forced the brightest smile I could manage. Nothing, sweetheart. Just someone playing a silly joke on Mommy. But nothing about this felt like a joke. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This had to be some cruel prank, right? Maybe another parent at school who didn't. Like me, maybe someone jealous of my perfect little family. Because that's what we were, perfect. Damien Cross had been the ideal husband for 3 years. He saved me when I was drowning in grief after Andrew's sudden death in that terrible car accident. When I could barely get out of bed, when I forgot to eat, when Sophie cried for her daddy every night, Damien was there. He held us both together when we were falling apart. He loved Sophie like his own daughter. He never missed a school play or a soccer game. He taught her to ride her bike, helped with homework, read bedtime stories in funny voices that made her giggle. He fixed everything that was broken in our lives. Or so I thought. That morning, I kissed Damien goodbye as he left for work, just like every other day. He owned a consulting business, traveled sometimes, but always came home to us.
Always.
Brought flowers on Fridays. Always made Sophie pancakes on Saturday mornings. Love you, beautiful, he whispered in my ear before leaving. Can't wait to get home to my girls. I watched him drive away in his silver BM, the same car I'd seen 1,000 times. But now, with that note burning in my pocket, everything looked different, suspicious, wrong. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept pulling out the note, staring at those shaky letters. My coworker Maria noticed my distraction during our morning meeting. Julia, you look like you've seen a ghost. Everything okay at home? Fine. I lied, just tired. But nothing was fine. The note kept echoing in my mind. Check the storage unit on 5th Street. Damien loved me. We were happy. Sophie was happy. We had family game nights and movie marathons. We went to church together every Sunday. Last month, we'd planned our summer vacation to Disney World, but I couldn't stop thinking about how Sophie had been acting lately. Quieter at dinner, less excited when Damien came home. I thought she was just getting older, more independent. Now I wondered if there was something else. That evening, Damien arrived with my favorite roses, pink ones that smelled like heaven. For my beautiful wife, he said, kissing my cheek. His smile was warm, his eyes loving. He smelled like the cologne I bought him for Christmas. Everything about him seemed normal, safe, familiar. How was your day? I asked, watching his face carefully for any sign of deception. Same as always. Boring meetings with boring people. All I could think about was getting home to you and Sophie.
He ruffled Sophie's hair as she ran to hug him.
Did my princess have a good day at school? Sophie hugged him, but something felt different. Her smile seemed forced. It was okay, Daddy Damien. Just okay? What happened to my excited little girl who used to tell me everything about her day? Sophie shrugged and went back to her coloring. Damien looked at me with raised eyebrows. She's been quiet lately, I said. Maybe just tired from school. That night, after Damien fell asleep beside me, I crept into Sophie's room. She was sleeping peacefully, her dark hair spread across the pillow like her father's used to be. I felt like a terrible mother for snooping, but I had to know if there was something she wasn't telling me. I looked through her backpack, past the spelling tests and permission slips. Hidden between her math worksheets, I found a crumpled drawing that made my blood freeze and my breath stop. She had drawn our family. Me in my blue dress, her in her favorite purple shirt, and Damien in his work suit. But this wasn't a happy family picture. In the drawing, Damien was holding hands with a tall woman with long black hair and red lips. Sophie had drawn herself standing far away from them, with tears falling from her eyes like raindrops. At the bottom, in her careful 6-year-old handwriting that she was so proud of, "Why does Daddy love her more?" My hands shook as I stared at the drawing. Sophie had never mentioned another woman. She'd never asked about Damien having other friends. She loved him completely, trusted him like she trusted her real father. Who was this woman? And why was my little girl drawing herself crying because of her? I wanted to wake Sophie up and ask her a million questions. But she looked so peaceful, so innocent. Whatever was happening, she was already carrying too much weight for a 6-year-old. The next morning, I couldn't focus at work. Every meeting felt endless. Every email seemed pointless. The note and Sophie's drawing kept spinning through my mind like a terrible song I couldn't stop humming. Check the storage unit on 5th Street. During lunch, I drove to the facility. I got out of my car. The office was small and smelled like coffee and cigarettes. An older man with kind eyes sat behind the desk. "Can I help you, miss?" "I'm looking for Unit 247, I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You got the key and paperwork?" "No, Someone told me to check it. They said the code might be 0618. He looked at me strangely. "That's your little girl's birthday, right? June 18th? My heart stopped. "How do you know that?" The man who rented the unit, real polite fellow, always paid on time. Said he was storing things for his stepdaughter's future. Talked about her all the time. What did he look like? Tall guy, dark hair, nice smile. Drove a silver BM. Said his name was David Collins. David Collins. Not Damien Cross. My legs felt weak. When did he rent this unit? "Oh, about 4 years ago. Right before that terrible car accident on Highway 9. You remember that young businessman who died? Awful thing." This David fellow seemed real upset about it. 4 years ago. Right before Andrew died. Asterisk. The old man handed me a clipboard. "You want to see the unit? I got the master key if you can prove you're supposed to be here." I showed him Sophie's drawing, my driver's license, anything that proved I was Sophie's mother. My hands were shaking. So bad I could barely hold the pen. Unit 247 sat at the end of a long row. The orange door looked like all the others, but behind it lay secrets that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. The lock clicked open. I pulled up the metal door. Inside, boxes lined the walls from floor to ceiling. At least 50 of them, all labeled with dates going back 4 years. The smell was musty and old, like forgotten secrets. I opened the first box and gasped. Photos of me, hundreds of them. At the grocery store, picking up Sophie from school, at Andrew's funeral. Someone had been watching me for years, documenting my every move like I was some kind of experiment. But it got so much worse. The second box contained files with my name, Andrew's name, and details about our life together that no stranger should know. Our wedding photos. How did they get these? Our bank statements, insurance papers, even Sophie's birth certificate. Everything was photocopied and organized like a research project. The third box made me sit down hard on the concrete floor. Andrew's death report, but not the one the police had given me. This was different, detailed, technical. My husband, Andrew Miller, hadn't died in a random car accident like I was told. According to this report, someone had cut his brake lines. Someone had murdered him. And the signature at the bottom of the investigation report made me sick. Case closed by request. Of Detective D. Cross. Detective D. Cross. Damien Cross. I stared at that signature until the letters blurred together. My perfect husband, the man who'd saved me from grief, was a police detective. But he'd never told me. In 3 years of marriage, he'd never once mentioned being a cop. Why would he hide that from me? Unless ... looking for something, Julia. I spun around so fast I knocked over the box. Damien stood in the doorway, but he looked different. The warm smile was gone. His eyes were cold and calculating. Nothing like the loving man who'd kissed me goodbye that morning. Damien?
How did?
Why, oh, what is all this? I scrambled to my feet, my heart beating like a trapped bird. He stepped into the unit and closed the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a trap snapping shut. You couldn't leave well enough alone, could you, Julia? 3 years of perfect marriage, and you had to go digging around where you don't belong. What are you talking about? My voice came out as a whisper. These photos, these files. Someone's been watching me for years. And this report about Andrew's death, it says he was murdered. Damien laughed, but it wasn't the warm laugh I knew and loved. It was sharp and cruel, like glass breaking. Someone? Julia, sweet, trusting Julia. That someone was me. I've been watching you since before Andrew died. In fact, I'm the reason Andrew died. The concrete floor seemed to tilt under my feet. I grabbed the wall for support. That's impossible. You're a consultant. You met me at the grief support group. You saved me from my depression. You love Sophie. Grief support group? He laughed again. Julia, I arranged to be at that group. I knew exactly when you'd be there, how broken you'd be, what you'd need to hear. I studied you for months before we ever met. My mind raced back to that terrible time. The group met every Tuesday at the community center. I'd been going for weeks, barely speaking, just crying. Then Damien showed up. A widower who'd lost his wife in a car accident too. He understood my pain. He'd been so kind, so patient. Your wife, I whispered. The one who died in the accident never existed. Julia, I'm very good at creating stories. I know exactly what people need to hear to trust me, to love me, to give me everything I want. But you're a detective. I saw your signature on Andrew's file. Was a detective. Until I realized there was more money in other kinds of work. You know how much someone was willing to pay to have Andrew Miller eliminated? The walls of the storage unit felt like they were closing in. Who paid you? Lilith Kane, Andrew's biggest business rival. The woman who tried to buy his company and he refused. She decided if she couldn't buy it, she'd inherit it. Through his grieving widow. Lilith Kane, I remembered Andrew mentioning her. A ruthless businesswoman who'd made several offers for his tech company. Andrew had always said she was dangerous, that she'd do anything to get what she wanted. I don't understand, I said, though part of me was starting to understand perfectly. What does any of this have to do with me? Everything, Julia. You inherited Andrew's company when he died. His patents, his client list, his government contracts, worth about $50 million. Lilith knew she could never buy it from Andrew, but a grieving widow might be easier to manipulate. So she hired you to double quote to get close to you, make you fall in love, marry you, then slowly convince you to sell Andrew's company, which you did, remember. 6 months ago, you signed all those papers I brought home. You trusted me completely. I remember signing those papers. Damien had said they were insurance updates, tax documents, boring business stuff I didn't need to worry about. He'd been so sweet about it, apologizing for bothering me with paperwork, promising to handle everything. You sold Andrew's company? Sold it cheap to a shell corporation that Lilith controls. She got everything she wanted. Andrew's patents, his research, his military contracts. All for about 10 million instead of 50 million. The money. We haven't seen any money. Of course not. The money went to pay Lilith, and to pay me for 3 years of marriage to a woman I can barely stand to touch. His words hit me like physical blows. You don't love me? Love. You? Damien's eyes were ice cold. Julia, I'm very good at my job. I can make anyone believe anything. The flowers, the romantic dinners, the way I held you when you cried about Andrew, all performance. All part of getting paid. I thought about our wedding day, how happy I'd been. How grateful I'd felt to find love again after losing Andrew. The vows we'd said, the promises we'd made. All lies. Sophie, I whispered. What about Sophie? You love her. I know you do. Sophie's useful, he said carelessly. Sweet little girl makes me look like a family man. Helps with the act. Though she's been asking too many questions lately. Questions about what? About Lilith. She saw us together a few times when I was supposed to be at work. Smart kid, drew that picture you found. Good thing you found it, and not someone else. You saw the drawing. Julia, I see everything. I know everything about your life. I've been controlling your life for 3 years. He pulled out his phone. In fact, Lilith's waiting in my car outside. We're going to take a little drive and, you're going to sign some final papers. The house, your bank accounts, Sophie's college fund, all of it transfers to us. And if I refuse? Damien's smile was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Sophie's at school right now, Maple Elementary, Mrs. Johnson's class. Recess ends. In 20 minutes. School buses are so easy to tamper with. So tragic when there are accidents. My mother's instincts kicked in like a roar in my chest. Nothing else mattered except protecting my little girl. Don't you dare touch her. Then be a good girl and come with me. Sign the papers and Sophie. Stay safe, refuse and ... He shrugged. Well, let's just say she joined her real daddy sooner than expected. But as we walked toward his car, I saw something that changed everything. Through the rear window, I could see a woman with long black hair, the same hair from Sophie's drawing. She was tied up with rope, tape over her mouth, struggling against the restraints. Damien, I said carefully, trying not to show my shock. Is that Lilith in your car? He followed my gaze and cursed it under his breath. She got greedy. Started demanding more money, threatening to expose the whole operation if I didn't pay her extra. Can't have that. So you're double-crossing your own employer? I'm tired of taking orders from anyone. With you and Lilith out of the way, I'll have everything. Andrew's fortune, your life insurance money, this house, and no one left to ask inconvenient questions. That's when the full horror hit me. Damien wasn't just a hired killer. He was a killer who eliminated everyone in his path. Once they were no longer useful, Andrew, soon Lilith. Then me, Sophie would be left completely alone, completely at his mercy. But I had been married to Andrew Miller for 8 years, one of the smartest, most strategic businessmen in the city. I had learned a few things about thinking under pressure and finding solutions when everything seemed hopeless. You're right, I said, forcing my voice to sound defeated. I can't fight you. I'll sign whatever you want. Just, please don't hurt Sophie. She's just a little girl. Damien relaxed slightly, probably thinking he'd finally broken me. Smart choice. Get in the car. First, I need to call my sister to pick up Sophie from school early. So she doesn't worry when I don't show up. Fine, but make it quick. I pulled out my phone, but instead of calling my sister, I dialed 911. When the operator answered, I said in a loud, clear voice, Hi, Charlotte. It's Julia, Can. You please pick up Sophie from Maple Elementary right away. I'm at the secure storage facility on 5th Street, Unit 247 with Damien Cross. Damien lunged for the phone, realizing what I was doing. Yes, the same Damien Cross who murdered Andrew Miller 3 years ago. I continued quickly. The police should probably come help us.
He has Lilith Kane tied up in his car and he's threatening
to kill both of us. Damien grabbed for my phone, but I was already running. Years of chasing Sophie around playgrounds and playing tag in the backyard had kept me in better shape than I'd realized. I heard him shouting behind me, but I had a good head start. I ran toward the storage facility office, screaming for help. The elderly manager came out, took one look at my face, and immediately locked the door behind me. Call the police, I gasped. There's a killer in the parking lot. Through the window, we could see Damien running toward his car. But it was too late. The sirens were already getting louder. Within minutes, the parking lot was full of police cars, their red and blue lights flashing like fireworks. I watched through the window as officers surrounded Damien's BM. He tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. When they tackled him to the ground, I felt something break loose in my chest. 3 years of lies. 3 years of living with a monster. 3 years of my daughter being in danger. They found Lilith tied up in the back seat, barely conscious but alive. The paramedics loaded her into an ambulance while Damien was loaded into a police car, screaming about his rights and demanding a lawyer. 2 hours later, I was at the police station giving my statement to Detective Rodriguez, a kind woman with tired eyes who'd probably seen too many cases like mine. Mrs. Mason, we need you to know that we reopened your first husband's case immediately after your call. Damien Cross confessed to tampering with Andrew Miller's brakes. He's facing first-degree murder charges along with kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. What about Lilith Kane? She's in the hospital but talking. Turns out she hired Damien to get close to you, but never authorized murder. She's cooperating fully in exchange for a lighter sentence. I felt hollow inside, like someone had scooped out everything I thought I knew about my life. Detective, how could I have been so stupid? 3 years of marriage, and I never suspected anything. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. Julia, these people are professional con artists. They study their targets for months, learn exactly what to say and do to gain trust. You weren't stupid. You were grieving and vulnerable, and he took advantage of that. That's not your fault. What happens now? Now you rebuild. The assets Damien stole from you. We're working on recovering those. The house is still legally yours. Sophie's college fund was transferred to an account we can trace. It's going to take time, but you're going to get your life back. That evening I picked up Sophie from my sister's house where she'd been staying since school. She ran to me like she always did, but this time I held her tighter than ever before. Mommy, where's Daddy Damien? Charlotte said he had to go away. I had practiced this conversation during the drive over, but my heart still ached. Sophie. Sweetheart, Daddy Damien had to go away for a long time. He wasn't really the person we thought he was. Is he coming back? No, baby, he's never coming back. Sophie looked up at me with those serious brown eyes, so much like Andrew's. Good, I didn't like him anymore anyway. What do you mean? He was mean to you when you weren't looking. He said bad words about Daddy Andrew. And I saw him with that lady with the black hair. They were kissing in his car when he was supposed to be at work. My heart broke for my little girl who had been carrying these secrets, trying to protect me in the only way she knew how. Sophie, who helped you write that note? The one you put in your lunchbox? Mrs. Patterson from next door. I told her I was worried about you because Daddy Damien was acting scary. She said maybe someone needed to know, so she wrote it for me because my writing is still messy. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who I barely talked to beyond polite. Waves had probably saved our lives. I made a mental note to bake her the biggest thank you cake in history. 6 months later, Sophie and I moved to a new house across town, not because we had to, but because we wanted a fresh start. We kept Andrew's photo on the mantle and started telling Sophie more stories about her real daddy, the brilliant, kind man who would have loved her more than anything in the world. The money Damien had stolen was slowly being recovered through the court system. Some of it went into a trust for Sophie's future. Some of it I used to start a foundation helping other widows who might be targeted by predators like Damien.
Damien.
Cross was sentenced to life in prison for Andrew's murder. Lilith Kane got 12 years for conspiracy and fraud. The judge said they were both fortunate that their scheme had been discovered before they could hurt anyone else. As for me, I learned that strength isn't about never being fooled or never making mistakes. It's about fighting back when you discover the truth. It's about protecting the people you love, even when you're terrified. It's about refusing to let evil people destroy your faith in goodness. Sometimes I think about that pink unicorn lunchbox, still sitting in our kitchen cabinet. Such an innocent thing that revealed such darkness. But it also led to justice for Andrew and safety for Sophie and me. I'm not the same trusting woman I was 4 years ago. I'm more careful now, more aware, more protective, but I'm not bitter. Because every morning Sophie wakes up safe in our real home, not in the house of lies that Damien built around us.
That's
the best revenge of all, refusing to let evil people steal your hope for the future. Late at night, when Sophie's asleep and the house is quiet, I sometimes whisper, "Thank you, Andrew. You sent her the strength to save us." Because love doesn't die when people are taken from us. It transforms into the courage we need to fight for what matters most. The unicorn lunchbox sits in our kitchen now, holding Sophie's lunch every day. But it also holds a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices, a child's worry, a neighbor's care, a mother's instinct, can be the most powerful weapons against darkness. I'm Julia Mason. I survived a marriage built on murder and lies. My daughter and I are safe, free, and building a real life together. And that's the greatest victory of all. That's my story. That's my revenge. But now I want to ask you. If you ever opened something as innocent as your child's lunchbox and uncovered a secret that could destroy your entire marriage, what would you do? Would you confront the truth head-on, or would you try to protect the illusion? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one.